Hi, Maaike.
Hi.
Welcome to Asian Business Owners.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. You're also a podcast host.
Yes, I'm very excited to sit on the other side.
Yeah, it's. I think it's more difficult. It's easier to ask the questions.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll find
you
out.
let me know. Yeah. So, Maaike, you are a founder and podcaster. You're a former CEO of Visa in Hong Kong and Macau.
Yep.
You founded Femtech Future, an advisory and investment firms that helps improve women's health.
Yep.
That's a big topic.
Yes.
Very broad. We'll see that. Just before we start, we're going to use the word femtech a lot.
Yep.
So can you explain to the listeners what this is?
Yeah, sure. So femtech is basically a term that was coined by a lady called Ida Tin in 2018. She is the co-founder of the period tracker Clue, which you may have heard of. And she was asked at a TechCrunch conference by journalists, like, what is your category of technology? And she said, femtech, female technology. Okay. So basically what it is products and services that use technology to support the health and well-being of women. And this can be anything from digital wellness to apps to wearables to even treatment and diagnostics for menstruation, maternity, menopause, mental health.
Okay.
But also conditions that disproportionately affect women, like autoimmune or cardiovascular disease or endometriosis, things like that.
So, for example, the period tracking app that I have is femtech.
Yes.
It's called Flow.
Yeah. Flow. Yeah.
You've heard of it?
Yes,
yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the most successful...
Lifesaver.
one of the most successful period trackers, but also slightly controversial because they have no woman in their...
oh, really?
As founders, yes.
Okay. Okay, good to know.
Something we can talk about
so
separately.
Is there an alternative to that app?
Clue.
Oh, Clue.
Yes.
Okay. What's it? How do you spell that?
CLUE. Clue.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So before we deep dive into
Yes.
this, because I feel like we could talk about this for hours. First, I would like to know, as you spent 25 years in C-suite jobs in corporate.
Yeah.
Actually, you took a big leap. How did you feel when you handed back your badge and you just walk out the building and you knew that you would start your thing?
Yeah. To be honest, I was extremely excited. So obviously you don't make a decision like this overnight. I spent, as you rightfully said, 25 years in corporate C-suite roles. And I spent a lot of time bringing women into the workplace and then trying to elevate them into leadership positions. But I also realized when technology came in 2013 more to the forefront, which was the start of like the fintech boom, that particularly in technology, women were left behind. So I had like two themes in my life. One was female empowerment and the other one was technology. So I felt that the two kind of came together at one point in time.
Okay.
And it almost felt like I was walking on a high diving board, and that I spent 25 years kind of getting up the stairs and then walking towards the end and kind of stepping back and going forward and stepping back. And I think once I made the jump, it was like, woohoo, I did it. There's no turning back.
Okay. Woohoo. And then, oh, okay.
No, there wasn't really an okay kind of thing. No, it was, I was genuinely excited because I felt that probably for the first time, I'd actually really found my purpose.
Okay. Yeah. Your Instagram account it's Maaike on a mission.
Yep.
You kind of explained how you connected the dots between, tech and women empowerment. But was there maybe a personal experience at work or in your personal life that led you to this, you're very committed to this. It's a purpose that is beyond yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, so I'm a mother of 3 teenagers. I have a 21-year-old, a 19-year-old, a 17-year-old. I'm married. I've had a very successful career.
Boys or girls?
My eldest is a boy, then a girl, then a boy.
Okay.
So I'm a mother. I'm a partner. I'm a caregiver, but I'm also a CEO. And I realized actually during my career that for a lot of women that have to juggle a lot of things, their health is at the bottom of the Maslow curve, right? So you take care of everybody else, the children, the employees, your partner, your family, whatever comes. But for me, I realized when I turned 40 that I hadn't really been taking care of myself.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the gym. I was overweight. I wasn't doing any exercise, but also very basic medical things that you and I need to do just because we're a woman, like a pap smear, like a mammogram, continuously like, oh, I don't have time this month. I'll do it next month.
And even mental health,
Oh,
right?
Let's not even go mental health. For me, the big trigger was about my physical health and well-being.
Yeah.
So when I came across the term FemTech in 2018, I was like, wow, this would be such a game changer for me, because it means I'm no longer 100% dependent on the medical healthcare system that operates from 9 to 5, when I'm also a CEO, and outside of 9 to 5, I'm the caregiver, the mother, the partner.
Yeah.
So I thought, how amazing would it be if we can use technology to democratize the health and well-being of women? So when I came across FemTech, I thought, oh my God, this is it. This is the missing link. This is what I've been looking for. And when I started to dig into this a little bit deeper, I realized that we actually have what we call a gender health gap.
Yeah.
And the gender health gap is basically the care that women need versus what they can get from the existing healthcare system, just because we don't know enough about the female body.
Yeah.
And
I came across a few fun facts about this,
Yes.
even before
yes,
we were supposed to
Yes.
do this. So it's really a topic that I like to learn about this. So there were a few things. First, that when they test the cars, the
Yep.
crash tests, they only use mannequin but
Yep.
male,
yeah,
which is, up until a few years.
Yep.
So I'm not talking about something in the past.
yeah,
This is crazy when you think about it.
yes,
There was also this thing about medication.
yeah,
The dosage is based on men,
yeah,
not women. And the last thing was very scary. It's about the, stroke when you
Yep.
have a heart attack.
Yep.
It's not the same symptoms
yeah, correct.
from a man. A man, it's the arm, you have a pain in the arm, in the left arm and in the chest. For women, it's not that at all. And many women, when they go to the emergency, saying they feel, something's bad when, I guess,
Yeah.
when you're going through that. And they got told they're stressed and anxious.
Yes. So what you're describing is basically the gender health gap,
Yeah.
which has come about because traditionally the whole industry has been focused on men, and women have been treated like little men. Basically the closest to a 75 kilogram male is a white female. So everything we know about the women are basically focused on smaller white males. And all the things you describe are true. So it wasn't until 1994 that it actually became mandatory to include women in clinical trials. Which means that, to your point about the dosages of medications, or if you look in the news about drug recalls, a lot of the drugs were not properly tested on women because they were not included in clinical trials. The other thing you talk about, the female heart, if you take a medicine book, you have the male heart as being the norm, and the female heart is the anomaly. Instead of saying, well, there's two kinds of heart, there's a male and a female heart. And to your point, the male heart attack is what we call the Hollywood heart attack, which is like, oh,
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
But women actually get pain between the shoulder blades. And as you said, they get a lot of anxiety and sweats. And a lot of women firstly go and Google because they don't know actually that they're having a heart attack. So that's already an hour delayed. And by the time they actually make it to an emergency room, very often they get misdiagnosed because they look at this as, you know, this is anxiety or hysteria, or it is any kind of other symptom. And as a consequence, to come back to your point around medication, very often they are giving sedatives versus men would get a painkiller. Because it is seen as being something that is emotional or mentally driven.
Yeah. And hysteria, yeah.
So the more I learn about this, the more passionate I become, firstly about educating women about their own health and well-being, but also kind of making sure that we close this gender health gap.
Yes.
Not only because it's the right thing to do for women, but also because it's a massive commercial opportunity. Because actually closing the gender health gap would actually add about $1 trillion to the global economy by 2040. So this would be a massive game changer for all of us, actually.
I like that you mentioned that because, of course, when you start a business, you have a purpose and you solve a problem.
Yes.
But you also need to earn money, right? To earn your living. And I like that you mentioned that. And it's not just for the sake of saving women, but there's also an opportunity. And this is actually speaking the language of, you know, capitalism.
Yep.
We live in this world and it's, you know. But what about the timing? Because when you start a business, you want to do that, you have an idea, a concept, or you see a gap in the market. How do you know when it's the right time to do that? Because you mentioned on the call we had that you published a post on LinkedIn about that, and actually it wasn't the right time at that time in 2019. And now is it? Or did you decide that it was time?
Well, it was time for me. So I think, as I mentioned, 2018 was when I first came across the term FemTech. And actually, this technology is a great way, in my view, the only way to close this gender health gap, because we are so far behind. If we wait, it's going to take 250 years. So we need technology to support us in helping close that gender health gap. And I'm extremely optimistic about the opportunity because actually women's health innovation is the fastest growing area of innovation. But to come back to your point, in 2018, when I first explored whether there was a business opportunity there, it was way too early. Nobody was ready for it. Companies like Clue had only started a few years ago in Europe, and nobody was talking about this in Asia. So I had an amazing time at Visa. I joined right into 2019, which was a protest and the pandemic. So it was a very hectic time. And I think you all recall what everybody was doing, particularly as the pandemic went on. People were studying, people were doing online courses. And I was really doing a lot more research on femtech and also sex tech, so more sexual wellness related technology. And I thought, okay, maybe now that we have gone through this a bit more, the industry is a little bit more established in the US and in Europe. Maybe now is the time to go and do something. And then there was quite a natural intervention because we came out of COVID, and my mother-in-law, she's 96 years old, 94. And my husband obviously hadn't seen her. We hadn't seen her during COVID. And he was like, I have to go back to the Netherlands to see her and support her. And I said, okay, well, this gives me an opportunity to rethink what I want to do.
Okay.
And I'm 53. And I was like, okay, now is actually the perfect time to go and do it. If I don't do it now, I'm afraid I'm going to stay in the corporate world for much longer. And if I really want to establish and work on this, now is a great time. So it was basically the fact that the industry was a little bit more developed in the Western world. There was a personal opportunity. And the fact that I looked at my own position and thought, okay, you've had an amazing career for 25 years. You've been talking about it for so long. Now it's just the time to jump off the diving board.
Yeah. Sorry for the background noise.
I'm not hearing it at all. It's very funny.
We're in Chaiwala on Wyndham Street. Thank you, guys. And what about? Well, it's kind of related to what you were saying. In corporate, a few years ago, especially I guess during COVID, the rise of diversity and inclusion was very strong.
Yeah.
I remember I was in corporate as well at that time.
Yeah.
In an international company. I used to travel around Europe, and I was in marketing, but I had also this change maker hat. At some point, I had to choose because I got a job offer from that same company to have a job in what we call DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
I'm passionate about this, okay, and about helping women and, about this gender gap and what we can do, but not only women, also LGBTQ and, many, many groups of people. And I turned down that offer because I thought, is it really a career that is sustainable? Is it really something that is going to persist over time? Or is it something that we can just all of us, well, ideally, all of us do instead of having maybe one department responsible for this?
Yeah.
And actually, I see now with Donald Trump and all these guys ruining the world, those jobs, those departments are actually disappearing, which is a shame, obviously. But what do you think about that? It's more a comment, a reflection about this, but about the sustainability of these positions and how it's maybe is there a best way to approach this?
Well, so again, I do think a lot of focus has been on bringing people with diverse backgrounds, and whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's sexual orientation, even cognitive inclusion, right, which has become very popular. For me, I feel that we should create a culture and an environment in the workplace where everybody can come to work as their own authentic self.
Yeah.
That should be the aim. And whatever you need to kind of support that building of that culture, I think, is what you need to aim for. And whether that is, to your point, in my view, it is the responsibility of the leadership and of the senior management and of everybody collectively, making sure that everybody feels that they are included and feel that they belong. And that's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing a lot of a shift from DEI into belonging, to creating programs where people feel that they belong and really can bring their true authentic self. So I think it's another iteration that is happening. I don't agree with everything that is happening globally, but I do think, sometimes relooking at things and reiterating is a good thing. I also think so that's one side. The second side for me is really on the commercial side. So there is we leave a lot of money on the table if we don't have people come to work as their true authentic self.
Yes. Yeah.
And the other day I organized an event about the gender pain gap, which is a little bit to what you were talking about how women and men experience pain differently. But if you have such a medical condition, male or female, where every day it feels like you're being punched in the gut, whilst you're in the office, that is harming productivity, that is harming, the overall feeling in the office. You just have an employee that is not performing just because they don't feel comfortable. So actually creating an environment where people can talk about it, where they can get help, where they can get support, will actually lead to a lot more commercial opportunities going forward. So I think on the one hand, it's creating that sense of belonging, but on the other hand, also showing what the actual costs and then potential opportunities are if you really take care of your employees in the workplace.
Also opportunities as in if you have a diverse team.
Yes.
Maybe you'll think of more solutions that you haven't thought of, because you have more different mindsets,
different mind
brains.
space and minds, thinking together. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, before we continue, I have some quick questions for you.
Sure.
So the FemTech app that you use the most?
Well, I'm menopausal, so I don't have to use a period tracker anymore, but I'm now very much using an app which isn't really on the market yet, but I'm testing it. It's called Soul. It's a Spring of Life, so it's a menopause community. And I'm also very fascinated, particularly as a menopausal woman, about sleep. Because it's a big problem as your hormones change. So I do a lot of work on my sleep.
Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Well, there's so few, more and more communication about menopause, but not enough.
No. Coming though.
Yeah, another topic.
Yes.
One self-care ritual every woman should do. Or maybe you do and you think, you tell your friends about.
Well, I mentioned I learned the hard way that you really need to take care of yourself. So I have really, really scheduled time now in my calendar for self-care. So I go to the gym twice a week. I go spinning twice a week. I meditate. I have created a whole routine around my self-care. Okay. But the most important learning for me is that you need to schedule that. Just like I schedule a podcast recording, you need to have a fixed time and place to do it.
Yeah. The song that you listen to when you need an energy boost.
Oh, I'm a massive fan of Teddy Swims. Mm-hmm. Do you know him?
No.
Oh, you know his songs.
Maybe.
And now obviously you're going to ask me to sing them, but well, I'll let you do it. Listen later. Yeah, Teddy Swims. I'm a huge fan.
Okay. Mine is Sia, Unstoppable.
Oh, yeah.
That's a good one.
Yes.
A book you would recommend?
So you quoted about the seatbelt from Invisible Women, but I would actually like to pitch a book by a local author, Anka Griffiths. So she has written a book, co-authored a book called Why Women Aren't Winning at Health But Can.
Okay.
Incredible book.
And last question, how do you celebrate a big win?
With a massive facial and massage at the Four Seasons.
Oh, that's a good one.
Well,
that's
the thing
very
is,
good one.
When you're an entrepreneur now, you can't splurge like this, like I could before. So if I have done something really well and I think I deserve a big treat, that is my go-to treat.
Of course we deserve it.
Of course. We deserve it every day, but as an entrepreneur, you also need to make sure you can actually afford it.
Yeah. Okay, that was cool. As a woman entrepreneur or business owner, I don't know which one. I think business owner is
both.
More
I like
real.
Entrepreneur though, but yeah, it's a business owner, absolutely.
I guess you came across stigma. Different type of stigma, maybe related to your gender, maybe related to the fact that, we touched upon this, many like men who, were in C-suite positions.
Yeah.
Later they are just, in part of boards of many companies and they're like, I know everything. I'm a consultant and know everything. So maybe people were expecting you to do that. In a way, you also help. Maybe you're part of boards. I don't know. So was there a stigma that you experienced, and also how did you react to it?
So what I find really interesting to observe is that you're right. When a man at my level would leave the corporate world, everybody would immediately be calling him for like a board position,
like an expert.
a paid board position. Nobody called me. I found that shocking to experience, but there was nobody that called me. With that, and then when I talk to people about what I do, the first response from women is like, oh, it's so good that you're doing this. This is really needed. Implying almost that it's like charity work, because a lot of senior women that retire from these kind of roles that I've been in would go and do charity work, or
I feel also that
education.
As a woman, when you have a business, no matter how old you are, people tend to think either it's a charity or maybe a hobby that then you will turn into a business. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I don't think people looked at it as a hobby, but I do think they looked at this as a charity work that I was doing. So I really have to explain many times, like, hey, this is for profit. I think there was also an expectation that financially I was kind of done, so that I could afford just to go and do, well, maybe a hobby or do something that I enjoy doing. But again, this is a passion and a mission. But the work I do supporting the femtech companies with their growth strategies, with their fundraising, or working with the corporates or the insurers is very much a for-profit business. But yeah, the perception had been slightly different than I expected it to be.
And what space does it take in your mind? Is it something you just, when you get told comments like that, you're just ignoring, or?
Yeah, I have to ignore it just for my own sanity. But I get really interesting feedback. So the other day I was at a big event, very, very senior people, and I was talking to a very senior gentleman, and one other male joined, and he said to the guy, oh, but you don't need to talk to her because she only does women's health. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. And I also noticed that when you're no longer in corporate, and when you do this kind of stuff, particularly in an area that is slightly stigmatized and taboo, you've kind of fallen off all the invitee lists, which is also interesting. But I'm totally fine with it. Every once in a while, but a very, very infrequent, do I have a, my God, how nice would it be if people would just be a little bit more open and receptive to understand what I'm trying to do and why this is such an amazing opportunity. But in all fairness to everybody out there, when I started in fintech, the response was the same. A lot of people from corporate life didn't understand what the fintech companies were doing. They didn't understand what they were going to be bringing differently. And, now we are 10 years on and fintech is very much embedded in society. And I feel the same is going to happen with femtech. And when you're pioneering, so the first time I pioneered in a corporate environment, which also has its challenges, by the way, but now pioneering and entrepreneuring outside of the corporate space in an area that is slightly more stigmatized, taboo, is a little bit harder, but it hasn't changed my energy levels or passion to kind of make this into a success.
And is it a topic, especially sexual health, is it more taboo here in Asia, in Hong Kong?
No.
Rather, compared to Europe?
No.
I
originally thought so. I always thought the West was much more liberal, particularly Europe and the Nordics. But I think there are certain areas that are very similar. So sex education globally is extremely poor. You're from France. I've spoken to a lot of people from France that...
I had one once when I was in secondary school. And everybody was laughing.
Yeah.
So,
So no, the sex education is the same for everybody. And the shame that still exists about sex and sexual health and wellness is also the same. I think we are trying to globally change the attitudes by normalizing the conversation. And that's also where femtech helps, because you're seeing at-home diagnostics tests for HPV, for example, or for STDs, which also helps with making people more comfortable to take these tests and then anonymize the way they have to take them. But yeah, there's just a lot of things about our health, people are uncomfortable talking about.
Yes.
And it's really wide ranging, from not wanting to talk about cancer, wanting to do this privately, solve it, to, not wanting to talk about going through fertility treatment, not wanting to say to people that you actually don't want children, is also a big topic. So actually, don't want to bore people with the fact that you experience pain. So the whole area is stigmatized. It's just that when we talk about physical health, it's the easiest thing to talk about. Mental health, still also very hard, but thankfully through the pandemic, people are becoming more open. And then sexual health is kind of at the bottom.
Yeah. Recently I was talking to a friend and we were talking about gynecologists. Well, I don't want to stigmatize them, but some are very good and some are very bad. And it's also, you go to the doctor, you go to see them, and how many times it happened to me that I was, you're not super comfortable, it's not a pleasant moment, but at least they can make it sometime, easier. So many times I got told things that were not clear, that I couldn't understand. I remember when I was younger, taking the pill, they don't tell you anything yet. Yeah, just take this.
Yeah.
And what? Yeah. Am I aware of how I should take it? And is it every day or just, 21 days or 28? You don't know. So all of this, I guess it's even broader than, of course it's broader than FemTech, but it's also the doctors themselves.
Well, I think, FinTech started because the financial services system was broken. FemTech started because, to a certain extent, the healthcare system is broken. And the women that originally founded a lot of these companies were trying to solve for their own problems and the own experience they had in the healthcare system. There's a lot of amazing things that we should be very grateful, particularly in Hong Kong, for the amazing options that we have for healthcare. But there are so many things that we can improve to create a better health experience. And when you talk about your own experience, I think the big problem is that a lot of women don't even know. You don't know what you don't know. So if you don't get the education at home, if you don't get the education at school, if you don't get the education from your doctor, you go to Dr. Google, or these days you go to TikTok and Instagram. There is so much misinformation out there that influences you. And that is where I think, to a certain extent, the technology that FemTech provides can help. So if you've been tracking, tell my daughter, track your period. Should you later in life have an issue, you have massive problems with pain, or you have fertility issues, at least you can go to your doctor and say, hey, I've tracked my period for the last 15 years. This is what it looks like. Does it look irregular? So I also have to encourage the women to get more educated about themselves. So the medical system, you're from France, I'm from Europe. There were like 5 people that were kind of holy. That was like the lawyer, the notary public, the banker, the doctor, and the priest. And basically those were the people that you trusted, knowing more about a topic than you. But unfortunately, we now see that they also have gaps in their knowledge. And women owe it to themselves to educate themselves, to talk more amongst each other about their issues. Because if you don't talk to anybody about your mental health issues or about your concerns about having a baby, then other women also won't feel comfortable to talk about it. So we have to normalize the conversation about it.
So what would you advise women to do, or what to read, or what to listen to? Maybe a podcast, to be more aware of and learn more about their own body, their own health.
Yeah. Well, it's a big challenge. Obviously, there are some really amazing doctors out there on Instagram and TikTok that really, really give amazing advice. One of the reasons I started my podcast, FemTech at Work, was to amplify the voices of the FemTech founders, so that women could also understand, like, hey, there's people working on solutions for you. And the other thing that we're doing is just creating more events and more. I'm organizing a very big women's health conference in Hong Kong, June 16 and 17, hoping that a lot of women will attend so that they get to understand more about the problems, but also about the solutions that are out there.
And now if we talk more about the business, I'm talking to the business owner. Did you have a business plan when you started all this? Because you talked about, you know, you have a profitable business. You're not a charity. So did you start? And if you didn't have a business plan, okay. So did you start earning money quickly, or how did this happen?
No, I didn't have a business plan, and it was very funny because when I resigned...
Isn't it outdated?
Not to have a business plan?
No, to have a business plan.
Oh, well, what was interesting is was that when I resigned from Visa and I had to call some of my clients, I also spoke to some of the fintechs. And they said to me, why have you resigned? Do you have a minimum viable product? So not a business plan, but a minimum viable product. And you need at least a minimum viable product that is 6 months 6 months old. So no, I didn't have that. But I was very fortunate and that was a very big surprise to me. So I had expected corporates or companies to come to me to say, hey, can you help us? Can you join our boards? Whether it was for a role in innovation or on tech. I still think there is a huge demand for that, but that didn't happen. But what happened was immediately startups found me. Through the community. They were like, hey, can you help us? We don't have any women. We don't know how to grow further, or we're in the B2C space. We want to grow in the B2B space. So very quickly, I had a handful of clients. And then from there on, I had a bit of time to talk to a lot of people and figure out what was the best way or the best model to make the business financially viable. And in all fairness, I started kind of mid-2023, and I would say that I just rode the waves a little bit, 2023, 2024, and it was only towards the end of last year that I was like, okay, now I figured it out. This is what I'm going to be doing. The difference maybe is because I was a CEO at a company, I felt, for me, integrity is very important. So I felt I didn't want to do other things in the boss's time. So maybe other people have more freedom to kind of work on a business plan. And I felt I had to resign first before I could focus more on this plan.
Talking about plans, what's the next big thing on your list for Femtech Future?
Well, basically, I focus on three different areas. One is the advisory and the consultancy, where I work with femtech companies, corporates, insurers, and that's going well. The podcast I started last year. I
like it?
I like it. I love it. I started with an episode every 2 weeks, but as of the 1st of January, I made it to a weekly episode.
Congrats.
And
we know the work it is.
Exactly. but I really, really like it. And I want to build that further. And I want to work with some of the brands that are interested in women's health and innovation and want to grow, particularly in Asia. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is, as I mentioned, the global summit. So the Women's Health in Focus Summit that I'm organizing June 16, 17 at the Asia Society. And then what is very exciting and new is that I will be launching a global platform called the Women's Health Innovation Council. Because what I have noticed is that a lot of the femtech companies work either in Europe, either in the US, either in Asia. And to give you an idea, one of a global first innovation from Hong Kong is a company called WomenX, and they have developed a menstrual pad that you could use to test for HPV and for cervical cancer. Wow. It was developed in Hong Kong. You can actually buy it at Manning's, but it is only available in Hong Kong. Okay. Now, there are women in the US that have developed a tampon that you could use to test for STIs. They don't know each other.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I'm creating a platform where these startups can come together to know each other and collaborate, but also bring on board the industry. So pharma companies, corporate innovation teams, insurers, anybody that is interested in women's health to, in this year's IWD theme, accelerate action. So I very strongly feel that what the fintech industry and the financial services industry was wrong is that they were at ends of the spectrum for too long, and they took them 5 years to realize that collaboration was key.
Yeah.
So I want to accelerate action, and I want to accelerate collaboration by setting up this platform.
Looking forward to it. I'm really intrigued by this thing you mentioned that it's available at Manning's.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, they're doing some pretty amazing things. So they have an area now in the IFC store where you can actually do self-testing. So they have all kind of products that you can test for at home.
Okay. I have a question before the last one.
Sure.
Is there a woman that, either famous or someone you know, that you admire because of her commitment to improving women's lives, and maybe not only health, but just their lives?
Well, I have a few, but one that I've really looked up to for the last few years is Gillian Anderson, the actress. Do you know her? She had the Netflix series Sex Education, but she was also, when I was younger, she was already very well known.
Therapist in
yes.
Yeah.
And she kind of pivoted from her career in movies and series to a sexual health advocate. So she started a drink called the G-Spot, and she wrote a book called Wands. So she has anonymously gathered female fantasies. So she has made an open call into the world to have women submit their fantasies, and they're now available in a book. And
I want to read that.
Yes, you should. It's really, really very interesting. But what I like about it, and that's what I'm also trying to do, is she obviously has a much smaller scale, but she's obviously a celebrity. And celebrities have clout and have power. And she is actively using her voice to advocate for normalizing conversations about sexual health and wellness. Just like Halle Berry has started to do that now for menopause. Oprah Winfrey has now started to do that for menopause. And me and my little humble thing, I want to use the corporate credibility, which is a big word, but what I've built up in Asia for the last 25 years, and use my corporate voice to advocate for topics that are stigmatized and taboo. And, you know, in all fairness, I think there is no celebrity or no famous person in Asia that is really kind of the spearhead of women's health. So in the absence of that, I just want to be that person that advocates for women's health and femtech in Asia.
Wow, nice. And now my last question, that is the question I asked all my guests.
Yeah.
Do you have a lesson that you would like to share with fellow business owners?
Yeah. For me, the biggest lesson so far is don't do it alone.
Okay.
So create your personal boardroom. So when you're in a corporate, we all have to be accountable to a leadership team or a management team. When you're alone, you're basically not accountable to anybody, which on the one hand is great. But on the other hand, you need people that kind of keep you on the right track. So I call it your personal boardroom. So create a group of people around you that you trust for different things. So I have one person that is very business focused, that keeps me on track for that. I have somebody that really keeps care of my mental health, my go-to person. Like I have somebody that is from the startup world. So I have a group of
different skill
people, different skill set, all friends that I can go to for advice, for help, for encouragement, that cheer me on. Because whilst it sounds very glamorous to kind of be your own boss, it can also be super lonely. And if you're not mentally very strong and capable of dealing with that, it can become quite problematic. So I find that the founders that do really well and the entrepreneurs that do really well, they all have people around them that keep them straight and that give them advice and that hold them accountable for their actions.
Yeah, it's funny that you say glamorized, because when I was recording an episode with another guest a few days ago, I asked him that question about the entrepreneurs being glamorized, and it's actually, this podcast is about the reality of entrepreneurship, and we know why we're doing this. Yeah, but we know that it's tough and that it's not so glamorous.
So on my podcast, I actually interviewed a lady yesterday who had been running a mental health startup for women in the Philippines, and she had to shut it down.
Oh, really?
She said, I tried, I had KPIs that I needed to meet. I took time off from, let's say, the corporate world to give it a shot. But I had to be realistic that this is just too hard. The timing is not right. The support is not there. And I commended her for her courage, because it is incredibly courageous to also say, hey, this is not working. I'm shutting down my business. Yeah. It's a good question to ask, because does it affect your mental health and well-being? Is it your financial health and well-being, your physical well-being, or whatever? But there should also be boundaries as to how long you continue.
But how to find that balance between being persistent, but also not stubborn.
Well, and realistic, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And that's where I think having people around you that keep it real. And that
so those people they're not working directly with you, or
no, they're just my friends, or they're people that are from the industry or that I've collected over time. What is interesting about a personal boardroom is that it also changes over time. So I've only been doing this for 2 years, but I've always had a group of people around me, and at one point in time, you may whatever it is that you were discussing may not be relevant anymore. And you mix people out and you create new people that kind of support, mentor, coach, cheer you on.
Thank you so much, Maaike.
This was it already?
Yeah. I think it was very insightful. I love to talk about this, and I love, people passionate like you, and you really thrive to make an impact. I love that.
Well, thank you for giving entrepreneurs in Asia a voice. I think it's really important to showcase all the amazing entrepreneurs that are out there.
Yeah.
And really grateful to have been here today. So thank you for having me as a guest.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.